There are many, many words that have been repeatedly used in the marketing of sports games, but there's one that's always bugged me the most. It's not because of Madden's state, not because of a funny physics engine in F1, and not because FIFA resembles playing soccer less than Rocket League. It starts with this. Being a Vancouverite, I don't think of a sleek, pristine image, motivational pop music, or big-name celebrities. I think of blood, sweat, and tears. Screaming, swearing, fighting, burning, and in the case of my hometown, all of those things at once, and not even for the first time. These games may have teams, competitors, venues, outfits, and commentators, but they're filtered through an alternate universe where all of these things have the authenticity of David Guetta. It's not that sport isn't ever as beautiful as these games make them out to be, only that it's equally as brutal. Match fixing, drug abuse, family abuse, infidelity, extortion, backstabbing, corporate backstabbing, overzealous media, fan violence, and cheating, on top of every single ism in the book. And judging from the attention these things always generate, I don't think it's a stretch to say that while hardcore fans may detest the acts themselves, the public at large loves the drama it creates. Because that's what has always drawn the most viewers to sport. Drama. Most people have no idea what a flop shot is, but they know Tiger Woods' mistress scandal, probably too much about it. And it was witnessing a golden boy fall to one of the biggest celebrity scandals in history and failure to keep his failures off the course, which made his 2019 Masters victory a comeback powerful enough to move the world. That's drama. Drama that none of these games have. Oh, they'll use that word in marketing as well. But by and large, the most you'll actually get in these games is a couple player interactions, seasonal rule changes, cutscenes, or actual gambling. Making these games resemble sport no more than before I was born and NHL had blood on the Genesis. I'm not saying Madden 25 needs to open with that scene from Casino, but it needs life. Something beyond stat screens or ball physics. And one of the ways you can add life to your game is drama. But because so much real drama implicates the sports organizations, alongside their endless list of sponsors, the developers of these games are inherently constrained from making their games even a tenth of what they're supposed to be, from making them authentic. So, this is it. This is what we're going to get. Every year, and everything, forever. It's why I've always been interested in a game that doesn't just show drugs, gambling, corruption, betrayal, and the F-bomb, but directly incorporate them into an M-rated, uncensored package that, in the creator's own words, by not watering down the experience, we definitely get closer to what the real thing is. The irony is we're more real than these games that are supposedly sims. I don't need Madden 25 to open with a criminal torturing players. But that is how Blitz the League opens. And I'm not going to pretend it isn't kind of refreshing. While not the only M-rated sports game of its time, it was the only attempting to depict a mainstream team game. I'm not saying volleyball isn't a sport, but it doesn't have the Super Bowl. There's a vast difference in scale. DOA X doesn't have stadiums, institutions, a full team roster, established players, or backstories that detail the fictional league's formation. Ostensibly, Blitz doesn't just present sex and violence, but a world. And that, I think, is the reason, despite not having watched a single American football match in my life, nor interested in changing that after Mini-Me showed off footy, the league has always stuck with me, ever since I first saw it 19 years ago. I even remember most of the team introduction videos, used in trailers on GameSpot.com.
When you play against New England, you better be ready to tune out a lot of smack. Bonnie Triande flaps his gums like it's going out of style. Bonnie fucking Triande! Worst part is, that shit works.
The great delivery, brazen yet varied personalities of each star player, and unique visuals per video injects more personality than many current games, let alone sports games. And because this is an M-rated game, its collection of 2000s nu metal and hip-hop is uncensored. After Forza Horizon muted enough lyrics to make instrumentals, it's weird to hear the N-word while changing graphic settings. Or team colors. Or a team that's the catalyst of this game's campaign. Yeah, campaign. Instead of franchise mode, career mode, or The League features exactly what EA and 2K would pitch in their sports games a whole decade later. Penned by one of the writers of ESPN Playmakers, the network's highest-rated show outside live football itself, that was only canceled after 11 episodes because of the NFL's objections to the very things this game realizes. I am so on board for this. I don't even care if this game's narrative framework is copy-pasted from any given Sunday. Rip-offs are rip-offs when they're in the same art form, but watching Saving Private Ryan and playing it are not the same thing. And in 2005, the year of Leroy Jenkins, playing Any Given Sunday was completely uncharted territory, not just for sports games as a genre, but video games as an art form. So, what does Midway accomplish with it? Mainly this. Having gotten their animations in previous games cleaved by the NFL since Blitz's origins, Midway's frustration is what shines through this game the most. At its best, Blitz the League reminds me less of Madden and more Doom, with the same maniacal laugh I can't help every time my defense sends an opponent into space or the X-ray cam is played. Yet another feature well ahead of its time. It's hard not to have fun in your first match of Blitz the League, not just because of the blatant violence and debauchery, but also a cinematic presentation that portrays everything from trash-talking players, coaches losing it over downs, and the varied music selection accompanying cheerleaders with enough flexibility to impress Garrus Vakarian. There's an immediate novelty to this game. One of 2000's corporate edge, when FHM magazine panels were a selling point, gambling implied backroom dealings instead of phone apps. The F-bomb was treated like a real bomb, and drugs were treated like a nuclear bomb. However, there's this TV show with drugs, sex, violence, and bad language. Am I describing The Witcher, The Wire, The Boys, or The Sopranos? None of these things each show has are what they're about. Saying The Wire is about drugs is like saying Call of Duty is about war, or Top Gear is about cars. These are all just subjects, and the interest a subject brings is not inherent. It all depends on what's accomplished with it. So, another way of answering the question, what did Midway accomplish with the League's M rating, is not much. I admit, the X-rays do lead to plays and thrills that I wouldn't get in a traditional sports game. But the appeal wears off faster than Coke, just as they always have in every other game since. Not only is there nothing beyond betting against other teams, because the campaign stops progressing if you fail to win enough matches, there's never a reason to bet anything other than the maximum amount against other teams, making the system completely redundant. While most famously used on the field through an animation every video review demonstrated, the bulk of drugs used in this game are just a stat booster from the training menu. They're not tangible. They don't do anything, not in gameplay, not in story, not even visually in your players. For all the pomp and circumstance of this game being banned in some countries, I've seen more drugs on Alvin and the Chipmunks. There's less than nothing here. Literally the only unique idea in this category is sending prostitutes to a rival team to lower their energy. And it's accomplished via a menu that's even more basic than drugs and gambling, and you don't have any control over when it opens. It's almost making me miss the fucking war meter. Almost. You know, while I've joked about how silly the censorship is in Need for Speed Most Wanted, It didn't seem to stop people from adoring that soundtrack, nor be filled by the company best known for SpongeBob SquarePants. Who gives a hairy fuck? And actually, the most memorable lines in this game are from those pre-rendered videos. The actual trash talk from players is just...
Listen to me, boy. You have got to be kidding me with that.
Weak. How does uncensored dialogue have less oomph than the censored words of real life? And God help these boys that they met the duo from Class of '09.
Do you get turned on by the paperclip guy in Microsoft Office?
What story? There's barely over 15 minutes of cutscenes, and no scenarios beyond a match with the New York Nightmares. There's just the occasional text and team intro. The marketing had so little to work with, they even had to resort to using a post-credit scene in their trailers. Not to suggest that I want more cutscenes. The plot's got less going on than F1's Breaking Point, and longtime viewers know I do not say that lightly. The story of a naive up-and-comer swallowing lies about contract payments might have been dumb, but even that's an improvement over the rookie's plotline in this game of, I want a fucking cheerleader! This is not a mature game in anything other than 2000's excess. It's less explicit than a St. Anna's Club Penguin video. It's the 14-year-old atheist of sports games that ultimately isn't any more authentic than Madden is, which wouldn't be a problem if that wasn't exactly how Midway pitched it. And yes, that is the font they let someone use. But even removing that expectation and just taking this game for what it is, it can't reach anything near its potential due to its impressive lack of depth. Since my video on them years ago, I have gotten bored of F1's career mode after years and years of upgrade trees and lifeless interviews, but I've had to reevaluate just what I'm taking for granted. Because once you've played that first match, you've experienced everything there is to experience in Blitz the League. The animations, music, and dialogue from players and commentators isn't repeated in your 20th, not even your 12th match, but the second, in a campaign that demands 30. Blitz the League isn't a game, it's a prototype. One of those bare-bones early 2000s experiments that would never get the second chance it deserves to become more than the minimum viable product it released as. Only it did. Despite the league's limited sales and Midway's nosedive into bankruptcy, Blitz was granted the opportunity of Hitman, Metro, and The Witcher to take a niche but promising game and realize its potential to the masses. It didn't. I don't like saying this in a game where Vancouver's not just featured, but one of the highest rated teams in the game. Blitz the League 2 is in many ways a step back from the original, littering itself with awful minigames, LA Rush looking ass cutscenes, and the tech being held together with spit and Kleenex. Not to call it lazy, there's obvious evolution of its X-ray injuries, performance drugs, and celebrations, all with the obvious intent of making the game more over the top. But then its cutscenes have quadrupled in screen time, seemingly with the intent of players taking the league more seriously. The plot is pretty fucked up, involving drugging, politics, nepotism, prison, framing, and blackmail, making it even weirder to hear a straight-up parody of John Madden in the middle of gameplay.
That was huge. Now what I want to know is if they can hang out of this lead. Is that possible? I mean, that's the $64,000 question. I wonder if you divide up the average guy's salary per quarter, if it comes out to around 64 grand. I mean, think about that. We got a calculator here?
The problem with doing this is the void in place of Frank further exposes how much emptier this game is. Banana Peel slides notwithstanding, the League cinematic presentation isn't expanded upon, but dropped almost entirely. Players don't trade verbal kid gloves anymore because they don't say anything at all to each other, and everything else is either a minigame or unchanged from the previous game. Though, judging by the desynced audio, broken instant replay feature, and hitches between every injury, I'd bet the money Midway had, these things also stemmed from a rushed development cycle. In terms of sequels, this game is less Mass Effect 2 and more Rage 2. Not bad, not outright worse, but is somehow more confused about its identity. I kept asking in the middle of a match, who is this game for? And I'm not saying it serves no one. If Shadow Ops Red Mercury is perfect for me, then anything can be for somebody. But I think a major difference is that Shadow Ops' camp is easier to appreciate today, because everything it failed was succeeded in the future. Meanwhile, I've been dreaming about an authentic sports game for years. Something that takes the emotion of Warrior, Rush, or Challengers, movies which themselves are a rarity, and map it to a controller. But after 2 decades, Blitz the League and its sequel, regardless of my criticisms, are still the closest thing there is to that dream. But what about its dream? Prior to release, the game was originally titled Blitz Playmakers. The game wasn't officially based on ESPN's drama, but the developers were inspired, and as mentioned, ended up hiring one of the show's writers to work for them, which made me ask, did Blitz fail to realize its potential because Playmakers did? And I had an answer in less than 1 minute of the first episode. Remember the opening of Blitz? Linebacker Quentin Sands breaking bones over an evil laugh? Playmakers opens with linebacker Eric Olczyk visiting a player in the hospital that he paralyzed.
Doc says you're doing better.
I wiggled my toe, asshole.
Playmakers isn't just heavier, its story isn't just more engaging, but in one scene, it puts Eric under heavier conflict than everybody, including the player, in Blitz the League. He's told that his hit was clean. He's told that his hit is what turned the game around for his team. He tells himself that everybody gets hurt in football. And yet, the words he hears and what his eyes see can't be harmonized. So he goes to therapy, listening to tapes of himself, talking about the last times he enjoyed this game, over 10 years ago in high school, awakening the memories and the trauma that came after, which are the reasons Eric plays. This is a season arc, how Eric is going to stay after learning to play for the reasons he wants to, right? Nope. This is a pilot arc about why Eric would choose to stay playing a traumatic game he hates, how the anger from his fear of leaving it is the very thing making him a killer on the field, why he's considered to be a great player. Now that's what I'm talking about. That's beautiful, that's relatable, but most of all, that's authentic. That's what sport is. This game, for these people, is an amplifier and extension of life itself. And PTSD is this show's opening subject. That's before delving deeply into corporate nepotism, closeted players, manipulated fans, serious injuries, media scandals, even full-on murder. And as said, it's not just the heavy subject matter that makes Playmakers. It's the depth of them and the world they take place in, highlighting the role of not just star players, but doctors, assistants, even the halftime cleanup crew in one of the most memorable episodes of the show. And like the greats, these plotlines aren't merely resolved in 45 minutes, but come back into play throughout the entire season, and likely the entire series, had ESPN been able to continue it. Now, putting it alongside those greats in this first season is a little much. I always forget how much of an influence 24 was in the 2000s, until I watched network television from the 2000s. Playmakers might actually love quick cuts, Dutch angles, and shaky cam more than Jack Bauer. They are relentless, even in dialogue, which reminds me of the audio, whose mixing is equally obnoxious. Bad enough to make it hard understanding what a character says one moment, before cutting to a nightclub with music that's dubbed lower than my videos like it too is trying to avoid copyright infringement. Though the most obviously dated component of the show are how the nuances of its male characters that you don't ordinarily see in shows of this era don't reach across the aisle. Whereas everybody from the coaches to assistants and associates are given believable yet profound choices in various conflicts, the wives, girlfriends, and reporters are as one-sided as they are one-note, consistently building the show's least compelling story arcs. It's surreal to go from a team boss manipulating its players into signing a deal to hearing the goddamn saxophone. There are definitely worse, but there's also much better. And yet, despite never intending, I binged the entire show. I was skipping phone calls and chat rooms to prioritize an ESPN football drama from over 20 years ago, because it is unique quality television. There wasn't an episode I skipped, nor a main character I was disinterested in, even after some of the horrendous shit they do, because the show's layers contextualize not just their mindset, but their upbringing, their environment, their friends, desires, and pressures. By the end of the show, you feel like you've gotten a perspective on everything. From cutting holes in shoes to fit the bandages protecting a player's mangled toes, to undressing for the piss man, to the team's doctor clearing a player they know has a kidney disorder, and the player deducing right then and there that his doctor is being squeezed by the bosses. It's a world I'm still thinking about, a world I want to delve deeper into right now, but it's one I think you should see for yourself, especially when it's as of now, right here on YouTube. I completely get why Blitz was inspired enough to, for a brief moment, name itself after Playmakers. But to be frank, it would have been an insult. Blitz the League is to Playmakers what Reservoir Dogs, the video game, is to Reservoir Dogs. It's not brain dead, it's not apathetic, it's certainly not lacking ambition, but those things don't stop it from being a shadow of its inspiration. I find Blitz the League all the more aggravating now knowing that Midway's execution isn't because what inspired them was a one-note fad. On the contrary, the show uses every opportunity its M rating granted that Blitz dumps on FHM and swearing. Admittedly, you can't open with Eric's PTSD in a game where the best part is holding down the left trigger hoping it's going to break some bones. Games are a fundamentally different art form. You could have bosses do more than leer at the mayor, drugs could be more than stat boosters, players could give more than elementary school insults, and choices could affect more than a war meter. Yet, as wanting as Blitz the League leaves me, it's not to be blamed. Because in terms of where it is on the map, a truly authentic sports game, it's not Halo, it's not GoldenEye, it's not Quake, it's not Doom, it's not Wolfenstein 3D. It's Catacomb 3D. And considering all the money, users, mechanics, and poor fuckers slaving away on a yearly cycle, that would be embarrassing if we didn't know exactly who is causing this. Imagine Wizards of the Coast telling Larian Studios they couldn't have characters curse because it would negatively affect their brand image. And D&D was actually real, and one of the easiest clips to find on YouTube is a famous tiefling saying "fuck you, fuck me, and fuck everybody." That's somehow real life. And I agree with that coach. That is fucking bullshit. And it's not even because I care about sports. I care about stories. And when it comes to story, sport, it's free real estate. It already turns friends into enemies. It already humbles established characters in a new environment. It already changes the rules. It already overwhelms a newcomer. It already mourns the beloved. It already gives children the stress of an adult, and it already raises the stakes beyond an individual's self-actualization. These aren't tropes. They're reality. A world where an artist can accomplish anything they'd ever want, without a fantasy power, family lineage, not even a previous connection between two characters, because the only things that need to bring people together in sport is the sport. It's amazing, and it's why I'm so fed up of it being ignored. sometimes in an entire art form, in the name of one big company helping another big company pretend that we don't already know they're just a bunch of greedy cowards, protecting the pockets their hands are in, funding advertisements in the place of art, perpetuating this paradox that serves nobody buying that product other than the bosses of that product. There's an opportunity to build towards something amazing, and there's even a reference point to start from. I'm not entitled to it. I don't need it in my lifetime. I just hope in the next 20 years that Blitz the League won't still be alone.